Yeah, we're not doctors or giving any medical advice. This show is intended for educational purposes only, and you should talk to your doctor about any medical issues. Now, let's get at it.
Today, we are going to talk about a very important topic when it comes to keto, and that is, are you eating enough fat to get into ketosis?
No, that's
No.
the answer. And, what I like to hear you talk about is can you do a low fat keto? That's like my favorite topic for you to yell at people about.
People that are doing low fat keto, I don't even think they realize that they are doing low fat keto because they're following these keto experts who are recommending that they still keep their calories very low, like less than what a toddler should be eating in a day. And so they think as long as they're keeping their calories low, they probably will show numbers on the ketone meter because that's starvation ketosis. So they think that they're doing keto right. And while they could lose some weight in the short term, long term, it's just not really a great idea.
Right. And it is one of my favorite things when I look over somebody's food journal and I let them know that my 5-year-old eats more than they do.
My Joey, when he was 2, he ate more than they did.
Well, your Joey is as big as you are. He's like your height.
Yeah, he's 5 and he's about 60 pounds, so he's getting
Nice.
there. He's a
Nice.
brick.
That's really doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, even if you think that you're eating high fat keto because you're adding more fat to your day, if you're still eating really low calories, you might be showing in ketosis, but it's just not a great strategy long term, because fat is super important on a keto diet. Don't you agree?
I do agree. And another big mistake you see is that people will just go to the store and they'll buy everything, every package that says keto on it, and they'll think that they're eating keto because somebody made the carbs lower and they made the fat higher. And so they think that that's a keto food and they eat all this junk and it doesn't really work for them because they're not really increasing the fats to the level that they need and they're not getting the types of fats they need. And like types of fats, I mean from food, real food.
From real food. And the carbs may appear lower, but they're not always lower because a lot of times they cheat with net carbs. So the total carbs they're eating coming from the sugar alcohols and some of the weird kind of fibers they put in there isn't really helping anyone lose weight on their keto diet either.
Right. So try to stay away from the packaged keto diet. We like to see real food diet go on. So why is this such a problem though when people don't get enough fat? What's the big deal with fat on keto?
So it's definitely your primary fuel source when you follow a keto diet. When you're following the standard American diet, carbs were your main fuel source, where you're supposed to eat 50 to 60% of your calories per day from carbs. Protein was still moderate pretty much either way, but the government tells us not to eat a lot of fat. And when you switch to keto, it does become your main fuel source since you're supposed to be getting a lot more fat. And it's also higher in calories per gram. So carbs and protein each have around 4 calories per gram, and fat has around 9 calories per gram. So, even if you're eating like 100 grams of protein and 100 grams of fat, it's not really comparable because the fat is just so much more calorie dense than carbs and protein.
And I tend to do pretty much everything that the government says. I follow all government guidelines.
Then you'd be in excellent health or
Hmm.
not at all.
Right. I think I've mentioned before that I had this whole book outlined and it was called The Opposite Diet. And it just
Yeah.
talked about how to do everything the opposite of whatever they tell you to do and you'll be golden.
Exactly. And that's especially true when it comes to how much fat you should be eating on keto. Because I think, what is a typical diet? They want you to eat like 10% of your calories from fat or something. I don't
Yeah,
remember. It
maybe
was like,
10 or 15, something like that.
yeah, somewhere in the 10 to 20 range. And with keto, you actually need to be eating somewhere between 60 to 85% of your total calories from fat. And you'll hear different variations of that number from expert to expert. But, I usually, when I calculate macros for people, keep them right around that 75 to 80% range. Do you think that's typical for what you see?
I think it's typical for what works. It's definitely not typical for what I see. When I see people come in, they're like, here's what I'm eating. They're almost never that high. And the reason is because they built this life on this foundation of that fat is bad. So they finally get to the point where they're like, okay, I see that my neighbor is half of what he was and he's doing keto and he tells me that fat is good. So I'm going to agree that fat is good and I'm going to eat more fat. And then when you look at it and you show them what they need to do, and they're like, well, I didn't mean that much fat. I can't do all of that. Are you kidding me? And that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, or if someone is eating the 60 to 85% of their calories from fat, if they're only eating 1,000 calories in a day, 60 to 85% of that isn't really a lot. It's not enough for most people.
Right. And you can just look at if somebody can just tell you what they're eating and you're like, oh, that's just not enough food. You need food. You should have some food.
Yeah. Well, we're all told that you need to, move more and eat less to lose weight. And so people take that to the extreme and they eat a lot less and move a lot more. And then they're just hangry and feel bad and they don't lose any weight. They actually start gaining weight and they can't figure out why.
Right. I don't know that we want to get into all of that. Do we want to talk about why they would gain weight? That's a whole other topic possibly. But basically, you need your body to feel good about the resources that it has available to it in order for it to say, okay, I'm going to let go of this fat that I have stored as an emergency. This money in the bank that I'm saving for a rainy day. I'm feeling so good about how things are going that I'm going to feel fine letting go of some of that. And when you're not giving your body the fuel it needs, it's like, nah, I'm not only am I hanging on to this, but I'm going to turn everything that comes in into more fat that I can store because times are lean right now. I'm not getting what I need. I'm upset about it. I want to talk to a manager.
Yes,
That's what your body's saying.
if you're going to bed feeling hungry at night because you are trying to eat so low calorie on keto, then you're actually doing your body a disservice, and those stress signals are going to cause your body to hold on to that stored fat, like you just said. But I know I used to think when I was going to bed hungry, I thought, oh, great, I'm burning fat. This is great, but it never fell off and it never stayed off.
Right. It's just a misnomer. But just try to keep that in mind. When you're going to bed and you feel hungry, you don't feel like your body has the fuel it needs. As you go to sleep, your body is saying, I'm going to talk to a manager while you're asleep. And the manager is going to not only deduct this from my bill, he's going to store more stuff in fat while you sleep because I am pretty bitchy when I talk to the manager and I usually get my way. And that's what the manager does. He puts more stuff in fat while you sleep.
So you're calling yourself a Karen,
Yes.
a keto
My
Karen.
body is a Karen. Yes.
And most people are. When you're not giving it the right fuel to function, your body will too become a keto Karen. That's a new
Right.
thing.
And that's kind of the really the thing. Just view it like your body needs those resources. It needs to feel good about what it's happening. And that's where the big disconnect comes. That's why one person can eat 600, 700 calories of food and lose weight and have it go well because they're processing that food so well. Their body has all of these reserves. Their body can access stored fat easily and burn it. All these things are going well for that freak person. Most people, not everything is going well. And when they try to do what worked for that freak, then they have a lot of problems and the body talks to a manager.
Okay, now speaking of talking to a manager, I was scouring some of the more popular keto websites just to see what kind of advice is out there. And so I wanted to read this and see what kind of thoughts you had about this.
Okay.
So a very popular keto website says if you eat too much fat, then your weight loss progress will stall and you may even start to gain more body fat. On the other hand, if you don't eat enough, then you will lose weight at an unhealthy pace while fighting off hunger pains and fatigue. To find the Goldilocks amount of fat, you must eat to meet your goals. Not too much, not too little, but just right. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. So I I agree with it, but probably not what they're thinking. You know what I'm saying? What they're saying is true in my opinion, but um, a lot of people are saying a lot of people will say if you have fat on your body, then I don't want you to eat extra fat on a keto diet because your body will just burn the fat that you have on your body. But the reality is that most people won't get into ketosis if they're not getting enough fat. They need to eat extra fat so the body's like, oh, I got plenty of this. I'm going to burn this all the time. Even the stored stuff, I'm going to burn that too. So that's really important. But the way that I view it is that, let's say that you are getting enough fat to get into a good state of ketosis, everything is going well. And so you have the viewpoint of, wow, extra fat. Nissa told me to double my fat intake. And I was like, are you kidding me? But I doubled my fat, and look at what the scale is doing. Look at what my tape measure is doing. It's all going down. It's amazing. So if she was right about that, I'll just double my fat again. I'm going to double down again. I'm at Vegas and I'm going to double it again. And then it doesn't go well, because there is a tipping point to where your body's going to say, wow, look at all this extra fuel coming in right now. I don't need it. I got plenty to burn. So I'm just going to store this for safekeeping for later. So there is a threshold that you have to find. And that's kind of why we tell people, like, these fat bombs are pretty delicious. Try not to have 12, in a sitting. You got to be a little bit intelligent and use some common sense with that. But so does it make sense that I agree with what they're saying, even though the way that they're presenting it is probably quite wrong? Am I right? If you read further, did you see that they were trying to say don't eat extra fat, or what were they doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what they're trying to say. I don't remember the article exactly, but, especially what they're saying about you'll lose weight at an unhealthy pace while fighting off hunger pangs and fatigue. While it's true you will be fighting off hunger pangs and fatigue, most of the time, I don't see people just dropping the weight. I actually see them gaining the weight for the same reasons we talked about. Like, maybe at first, when you first cut your calories, you will start to lose some weight. But in the long term, it gets harder and harder to keep up that low calorie. And then either you'll end up overeating and regain everything, or you'll keep eating like a bird, but still keep storing your fat from all the stress you're causing to your body.
Right. And the other mistake, and the thing that people that can, why this confuses people, is because when they start on keto, they're dropping their carbs too. And that initial droppage of carb is going to cause a lot of people to drop some water and pee out a lot of stuff, and allow the body to actually let insulin come down even at all. And so that initial weight loss can be big, and they'll view that as, this is the number of calories I ate that gave me that weight loss. So that's what I need to eat every day to continue that weight loss. And then when that turns into weight gain instead, they're like, oh man, I'm getting ripped off. I want my money back.
Yeah, and I think that's why tracking is so important, especially if you're not getting the results that you want. It's so important to track because, here we are saying that you can eat too little fat, you won't get into ketosis, you won't burn your own body fat. But I do agree with them that if you overdo it, like you said, if you just keep doubling it, because if, a little worked, a lot will really work. But if you're not paying attention and you're like really heavy handed when you pour that cream in your coffee, or you're popping too many fat bombs in a day, there is a point where you can eat too much fat. And isn't part of that due to just overdoing the fat is still going to increase your insulin, like cause another insulin spike because you're just eating too much food?
Well, too much food can do that. It's less likely that too much fat is going to do it, like too much protein can for more people. Again, too much protein doesn't create an insulin spike for all people, and not everybody's turning excess protein into glucose, but it's just more likely. But just the fact that the fat is food, you can raise insulin that way. But the way that I view it even more is that it's extra fuel. Your body likes to have fuel. It likes to have backup. It understands that sometimes there's not going to be a zebra to whack on the head, and you tripped on a log, so you didn't get a zebra that day. That's the body's still operating under that policy of, we have to hunt our food down and whack it with a stick or find some berries or something. So it likes to put things into reserves when it has a lot of excess. So yes, both sides are possible. A person cannot eat enough fat, and a person could eat too much fat. But 90% of the time when someone's in a stall that we see, it's that they're not eating enough fat.
Yeah. So don't let anyone ever tell you that your Goldilocks is like 1,000 calorie diet each day, because
I
that's
will punch
no one's
that
Goldilocks.
Goldilocks in the face. Stupid Goldilocks.
Yes. All right. All right. So while we are speaking of misnomers, I had another thing from the same website. So they said that the main reason why high fat, low carb diets like keto are so effective for weight loss is because they help us eat fewer calories without us noticing. And that's a pretty common, should I call it myth in keto? What do you think about
Well, I
that?
think the only problem with that statement is that there's not any part of it that's true. I mean, other
Yes.
than that, I think it's fine, and I'll agree with it. Other than the fact that there's no true part of it.
So you agree with none of it.
Yeah, none of it. There was a part at the beginning that said the. I was like, yeah, I could buy that. I could buy the. But the rest, then it went to main reason, then they were done. Like it was over after that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just, and that the people that are so buried in the calories in, calories out formula, and they think that since it worked in a petri dish, that it must work in all humans the same way. They're just looking for a reason. Well, then, because somebody says, well, why am I losing fat on keto when it's not looking at the calories? And they're like, well, it's just because it's probably letting you eat fewer calories because you're more satiated. And, it's just not true. That's just not how it's working. It's a cute story. I think you're adorable, but you're wrong.
I think when it is true, it's usually because someone's coming from the standard American diet or beyond, where they're just eating like McDonald's every day. So if you're eating all of those fat and carbs together, it's probably driving your hunger signals up, and you probably are eating a lot more than you will once you start a keto diet. So I think in that instance, it can have a little bit of truth, but that's making a lot of assumptions. But if you're someone like me who was stuck in yo-yo diets for decades, I was typically eating around 12 to 1300 calories per day because that's what I was told I needed to do to lose weight. And so when I started keto, I had to build my metabolism up to eat much more than that. So my body did feel safe to let go of stored fat. So, I was eating 12 to 1300 calories per day, barely losing anything, most of the time gaining weight. And when I was losing weight on keto, I'm like 1900 to 2000 calories. So, I mean, some days it's almost double. So, I would say eating almost double is not eating less calories on keto. It's actually eating a lot more.
Right, right. So you're going to be able to find the person like you just explained that was eating a lot of carbs and fat together, and a lot of the wrong fats and a lot of toxic food and all this kind of stuff. And you're going to be able to show the calorie intake and what they did and how this went to this on keto and how they lost weight. You're going to be able to find that person. There's plenty of those people out there. But when we're just looking at how the human body works, you have to first be able to process and digest the types of foods that you're eating. And then when your body can use that food, and you help get it into a state that it can burn a lot of fat, then you just don't need as much. You're not having that hunger, because if you eat let's just say that you go to McDonald's or something, you eat a lot of fat, but you eat enough carbs where there's no way you're anywhere near ketosis or even a fat burning mode because insulin is too high. You can be hungry really soon after that because your body wasn't able to utilize all of that fat source that came in. A lot of it was toxic anyways, and it just got stored in fat cells to keep the system less toxic. They're going to be hungry, and then they're going to want to eat more. So what you're saying is true in that respect. You're going to find the guys that are in that boat, but for most people that's just not the case. They're trying like you were. You weren't eating at McDonald's every day. You were really trying to follow the rules and do the right things, but you still couldn't lose weight. And
Yeah.
so
And
keto just sets you up.
I think unfortunately, keto is kind of a last resort diet for a lot of people because people don't want to cut their carbs. I mean, I get it, they're good. And so, they try everything else. They try all these other low calorie plans before they finally say, well, that's not working. So now I'm going to try keto. I'm going to get rid of all my favorite foods. And so, a lot of times people are like me where they have been eating low calorie for too long, and it's just setting you up for more yo-yo diets, especially when you're not eating enough fat to even get into ketosis in the first place.
Right. I'm cool with all that.
Yes. And so I think you would agree with this statement overall, but keto diets don't really have a whole lot to do with calories. When you keep focusing on calories, like getting that calorie in versus calorie out equation, that can actually hurt your progress overall. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And especially for most people who are really dieting a lot. Like it's a big deal. Most people that have gained a lot of weight and that's just a problem for them, they have digestive issues where they can't break their food down properly. And so when they're in that situation, um, they need to help their body access nutrients in that food. And, when you're doing keto right, you're eating more real food. So at least you're going to get some nutrients from that. And, all these things can start going in the right direction where the body feels better. And then it's really not about the calories. If you're in that situation where your resources are low because your digestion hasn't been working well, and you try to do this thing where you're consuming less fuel than your body is using, then your body is going to go into a stress mode. It's going to go into a fight or flight. We're in trouble now. We're out of resources. We don't have enough money to pay the bills. And that's when the stress hormones are going to come up. The stress hormones tell the body to break muscle down and turn it into glucose so it can be used as fuel. The stress hormones tell the body to take any fat and store that as a backup plan in case we run out of this way to make our own glucose. It has all these things going on that lead to weight gain. So when you're really trying to get less calories in than what you're burning, you're really looking to freak the body out if you're someone where resources are a little bit low, which most people needing to diet there are in that boat. And you can even look at your blood pressure, and if it's low, then you're in that boat.
Yeah.
Anything under 112. We're going to talk about that more in our bonus episode today.
Okay. So I think basically, to sum this episode up, we think that keto diets work not because you're withholding calories like that popular website said, but more because you are eating enough food, enough of the right foods to heal your hormones by giving your body the right fuel sources. So basically with keto, you are withholding carbs. So that way your body quits relying on that quick energy fix from sugar. You are eating high quality protein at a moderate level, and then you're eating more healthy fats, which can help your body start to burn ketones, which is an efficient fuel source, much more efficient than burning sugar and having to eat every few hours to get more sugar.
Right. It's really nice when you can pull it off and just feel satiated and not, and oh, I forgot to eat. It's just always fun.
Okay. So, if eating too much fat can lead to weight gain, but too little fat can also lead to weight gain, how do you help your clients determine the right amount of fat for them?
I just have Nissa figure out their macros.
Yes, that's what everyone should do. So I know that the common wisdom in keto is to just eat fat until you feel satiated, which can be okay because you obviously don't want to undereat and you don't want to stuff it in. But I think a lot of people, after so many decades of dieting, that their gauge is off when it comes to what is satiation. How do I know if I'm hungry, or how do I know if I'm feeling full? Like, you just lose those proper hungering signals. So I personally, I'll calculate someone's macros and I have a whole formula that I follow. But just to give someone a quick reference point, if they really want to see if they're eating enough fat or if they're way under eating, I like to use their BMR, their basal metabolic rate, to determine how much fat they should be eating. And so I'm just going to use a quick example. If you have a pen and paper, feel free to write this down. But, let's say you're keeping your carbs around 30 grams per day and your protein in a moderate range of 70 grams per day. So those are each 4 calories. So we're going to take that, add it up, which is 100, multiply it by 4. You're getting 400 total calories from carbs and protein each day. So if you go on Google and you look for a BMR calculator, it'll ask you for things like your weight, your age, your activity level. And so in this example, you want to take your BMR and subtract 400 from that number. And so that's how many calories from fat, the minimum that you should be eating. So when you divide that number you got by 9, that's the minimum amount of grams that you should be eating most days. And I
And
know
you're
that's
dividing
more.
by 9 because the fat has 9 calories per
Yeah,
gram, right? Okay.
fat has 9 calories per gram. And I mean, it would be, simpler to tell someone to go find a keto calculator and just have it calculate it for you. But the problem is a lot of the keto calculators out there actually
Ugh,
still advise you to undereat. So that's where that formula comes into play.
right. And you could also, just sign up for the Chronometer app and just start tracking your food so you can actually see the percentage of the macros where they are. A lot of people think, oh, I'm eating all this fat. And when they look at it, they're like 45% fat. It's like it's something low where they're really getting a lot more carbs and protein than they thought they were. So make sure you're really seeing what's actually happening before you assume that you're doing great.
Yeah, you definitely need to track with Chronometer to make sure you're not eating at that really low level of fat. But I think also when it comes to overall calories, like even if you are eating 75% of your calories from fat, if you're only eating 1,000 calories, but you really should be eating 2,000, then you're going to be in trouble because you think you're eating enough. But if you're not even eating at a BMR level when it comes to all your macros added up, then you're just way under eating and it just won't work out for you long term.
Right. And so it makes sense when some people fail. They're doing things that they hear are right because they worked for a guy. And so now that guy tells everybody this is what works. But they're making mistakes for their body and their unique body chemistry. And so it's not that, oh, I'm stuck and I just can't lose weight. It's that you're not working with your body. You're working against your body. And you just have to learn how to make your body feel better so it's willing to let go of the stored fat.
Awesome. Well, I think, now that we let people know how much fat they should be eating, we are going to switch over to our members only podcast. And what are some of the things we'll be teaching in there?
Well, we probably need to talk about how not all fats are created equal. Let's talk a little bit about how to look at blood pressure and what to look for to understand if your resources are low and if that's a real big problem. Because that's one of the biggest problems we see is that people don't understand how to look at their blood pressure and what it means. So let's dig into that a little bit. What else?
Yeah, and like you said, not all fats are created equal. There are some really bad fats that are sometimes recommended that you should be avoiding at all costs. So we'll definitely get into that because it can keep cravings high, it can keep you hungry, and just eating all the wrong foods. So we definitely need to talk about that and where those fats are commonly found. Um, and I
Oh,
think
let's
that will
also
make it.
talk about some supplements that can help people process fats better. Because if you're eating fats, but your body can't process them, your body is not getting the fats that it needs. So it's having a hard time getting into a good state of ketosis. A lot of people aren't eating enough fats, but some are eating enough, but their body just can't process it. So they can't access those fats. So we'll talk about some supplements that'll help with that.
Okay, we have lots to talk about. So again, if you want to learn even more, you can go to Keto Help 49. That's KETOHELPFOR9.com and join the membership.
Yeah, and we'll see you in there. Cheap and easy, lots of fun, and you get like free shipping on Nacho Reference. So it kind of turns out that the membership's free if you're using any of the supplements we talk about, and it's good stuff. Good stuff. All right, guys. Until then, we'll see you next week. Go to chatthefat.com and let us know if there's a topic you want us to cover on an upcoming show, and we'll kind of put it on our list.
Whether you're brand new to keto or just looking to move past roadblocks, join us for our next Troubleshooting Keto Master Workshop. Go to chatthefat.com/workshop to find upcoming dates and register for this totally free event. You just might find your missing piece of the puzzle. And